Imagine a giant snowball at the top of a mountain. If you give it one small push, nothing much happens. It rolls a few inches, picks up a dusting of frost, and stops. But if that mountain is miles high and the slope is consistent, that tiny ball eventually becomes an unstoppable force of nature, capable of leveling buildings. This is compound interest, and it is the only legal cheat code that exists in the modern world. Most people think of it as a boring math equation tucked away in a savings account. They are wrong. Compound interest is the fundamental law of the universe that determines whether you spend your life chasing money or whether money spends its life chasing you. It is the difference between a life of quiet desperation and a life of total, uncompromising freedom. But here's the catch. The most explosive growth happens at the very end, and most people quit before they ever see the first spark. At level 0, you are where most of the world lives, the linear trap. At this stage, your life is a direct trade of time for tokens. If you work 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours. In this phase, compound interest is actually working against you in the form of high-interest consumer debt. Every dollar you borrow for a car or a credit card balance is a soldier you've sent to work for someone else's empire. At level 0, you are not the investor, you are the investment for someone else. The psychological toll here is heavy because you feel like you're running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up. You see no progress because you are consuming your seeds instead of planting them. To break out of level 0, you have to perform the hardest act in finance, the first sacrifice. You have to find a way to live on less than you earn, creating a small delta. That tiny gap is the beginning of your snowball. As you move into level 1, you enter the invisible phase. This is where 90% of people fail. You've started investing $500 or $1,000 a month into a diversified index fund. You look at your account after a year and you've gained maybe 8%. After taxes and inflation, it feels like nothing. You've sacrificed dinners out, new clothes, and vacations, and all you have to show for it is a few extra $100. This is the valley of disappointment. Mathematically, the curve is still flat. At this level, your life doesn't look any different. You're still driving the same car and working the same job. This is the stage where your friends who are spending everything they make seem to be winning. They have the new iPhones and the designer shoes. You have a spreadsheet and a dream. The trick at level 1 is to stop looking at the balance and start looking at the habit. You are building the machinery. You are buying back your future hours one by one. At level 2 is the break-even point, and it usually happens around year 10 to 15 of consistent discipline. This is a magical psychological milestone because for the first time, the interest your money generates is enough to cover your basic necessities. It might not buy you a Ferrari, but it covers your groceries and your utility bills. At this level, the weight of the world begins to lift. You realize that even if you stopped working tomorrow, you wouldn't starve. This creates a shift in your power dynamic at work. You no longer operate out of fear. You become more assertive, more creative, and less stressed because you have walk-away money. The snowball is no longer a handful of slush. It's the size of a boulder, and it's starting to pick up speed on its own. By the time you hit level 3, you have reached the acceleration phase. This is where the math starts to get weird. In the earlier levels, it took you 10 years to save your first $100,000. Now, because of the size of your principal, your portfolio adds another $100,000 in just 2 or 3 years without you adding a single penny of your own money. The growth is now vertical. At level 3, your money is making more money than you are. If you earn $80,000 a year at your job, but your investments grow by $120,000 in the same period, you have officially become a bystander to your own wealth. Your life at this level is defined by time sovereignty. You realize that time is the only non-renewable resource, and you finally have enough capital to buy it all back. You can choose projects based on interest rather than invoice. You can travel not just to escape work, but to explore the world. Level 4 is the legacy phase. This is the pinnacle of the compound interest curve, the vertical hockey stick spike. At this stage, the numbers become almost abstract. The interest on your interest is generating sums of wealth that you cannot possibly spend in a single lifetime. Your life is no longer about survival or even luxury, it's about impact. You are now in a position to fund scholarships, build hospitals, or ensure that your family's future is secure for 5 generations. The most profound realization at level 4 is looking back at level 1 and realizing that the person who stayed disciplined when the account was small is the only reason the giant empire exists today. You realize that the boring 8% returns were actually the seeds of a forest. The tragedy of compound interest is that it requires the one thing modern society has destroyed: patience. We live in a world of instant downloads, fast food, and get-rich-quick schemes. Compound interest is the opposite. It is a slow, methodical, and often boring process that rewards the stoic and punishes the impulsive. It demands that you value your future self more than your current desires. Most people spend their lives at level 0 because they want the status of level 4 today without the 10 years of invisibility required to get there. They buy the luxury car on credit, effectively killing the snowball before it ever forms. To master this at every level, you must understand the 3 variables: time, rate of return, and contribution. You can't control the market's rate of return, and you have a finite amount of time, so your only real levers are how much you contribute and how early you start. If you start at 20, you are a genius. If you start at 40, you have to be a warrior. But regardless of where you are, the best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. Every dollar you save today is a seed for a tree that will provide shade for you in the heat of your old age. The journey through these levels isn't just about a bank balance, it's a journey of character. It forces you to develop discipline, foresight, and a long-term perspective. It turns you into someone who thinks in decades rather than days. When you finally reach the upper echelons of the curve, you find that the money is almost secondary to the person you had to become to earn it. You are no longer a slave to the ticking clock. You are the master of your own destiny, sitting in the shade of a forest you planted one seed at a time. The mountain is high, the slope is steep, but the snowball is waiting. All you have to do is give it that first small push and never, ever stop it from rolling.